Hey, just a quick heads up. This podcast is now called Becoming the Wealthy You. I changed the name because I never want you to feel like you have to already be wealthy to be here. I work with women who are doing well in their careers or businesses, but they're not building wealth the way they want to yet. This podcast is here to help you change all of that. If you're ready to start making real progress, you're in the right place. Now, let's get into the episode. You are listening to the Becoming the Wealthy You podcast with Jermaine Foley. If you're a woman who makes good money in your career or business, but you're not building wealth like you want to, then you're in the right place. In this podcast, you'll learn how to stop overspending, break free from the cycle of debt, save lots of cash, and become the wealthy woman you were born to be. Let's dive in. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Oh my gosh, if you're a mom or have kids in your life that you love, this episode is especially for you. Today, I have Clifton Corbin with me. Clifton is a financial advocate that specializes in helping parents teach their kids about money. Clifton is also the creator of the annual Raising Generational Wealth Virtual Summit, which is for moms who want to get better with their own finances so that they can feel more confident with teaching their kids about money. The theme for this year's summit is the Money Savvy Moms Edition, and it's happening April 30th, 2025 through May 2nd of 2025, and I will be one of the speakers. I'll also be participating in one of the live Q&A sessions on May 1st. So I want you to come because I'm so honored for this opportunity, and I will be even more honored if you would be my guest. So please sign up. It's super easy and it's completely free. Sign up by using the link in the show notes. It's the first link you'll see right under this episode. Again, it's completely free and it's virtual. So that means that you can watch it while you're driving. You can listen to it while you're driving, not watch it, but listen while you're driving. You can listen to it while you're at work. You can have it playing in the background or while you're cooking dinner, or just when you're ready to relax at the end of the day, you can catch all the speakers. There will be over 30 speakers. So you're going to get so much knowledge. You're going to get a lot of tools. You'll walk away a different person. And again, I would love it for you all to join me. I would love for you to sign up. All you have to do is go to the show notes. And in this episode, Clifton is going to give you more details. He's also going to share a lot of what he knows around helping moms feel better about really teaching their kids about money. And not just necessarily teaching them about money, but also modeling your behaviors so that they can just watch you be better with money and then just absorb that knowledge by witnessing it. So again, go to the show notes, sign up. Did I say that enough already? I would just love for you all to be there. And now we're going to dive into the episode. Let's get in there. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast. Today, you are in for a treat, something different. We're talking about kids and money. And how do you talk to your kids about money? How do you talk to them about wealth and all the things? And I have the perfect person to have this conversation with. His name is Clifton Corbin. He is a financial literacy advocate for parents and kids. Clifton, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited for this conversation.
Awesome. Okay, so I have to tell you, Clifton, I haven't said this yet, but you're only the second guy I've had on.
I'm very privileged. I know I am, and I appreciate it.
The first one was my husband, so yeah.
Oh, even more privileged. Thank you so much for having me. No, seriously, I really do appreciate you having me on. I know I'm unique. I'm a unicorn.
Well, we're so glad you're here. So before we get into all the things you are going to share with us today, let's start with your story. How did you become passionate about helping parents teach their kids about money?
Oh, I'm glad we're starting here because this is truly the genesis of it all. So I like to call myself a money geek before people would put it on t-shirts. Like I was so curious about money when I was a kid that, I had all the early jobs, the paper route, the lemonade stand, anything to get my hands on money. I was just really, really curious about like, how do you make money? What do you do with it? So I had all these different interests when I was a youngster. And that kind of grew with me as I again went into my teen years and all the rest. Like again, I had a co-op job through school, and I was working with computers, and I had a ton of jobs for such a young age. I had a lot of different jobs, and I was making some decent money. And then I went off to college, which the typical path for most young people. And for someone who was so interested in money, and I also consider myself very fortunate, I had parents who were very willing to talk to me about money. For someone who had all those, privileges, I went off to college and made a total mess of my finances. I got those early credit cards, thought I knew what I was doing, but I didn't. And I used those credit cards to buy, CDs. I used them when I went out. I used them for food. I used them for entertainment. I just used them it was almost like free money in my mind back then. I was just like, I was a low income student trying to make ends meet. And then I had this resource that would allow me to do all the things without limit. And then, eventually the debt collector starts calling and I couldn't pay. So my credit score got ruined, destroyed. My confidence also got ruined and destroyed. My self-esteem, all of it. So, by the time I finished college, I was deep in debt. Like I said, I had depression, I was anxious. And like I said, the debt collector kept calling and calling, and that's an experience that I don't wish on anybody. So fortunately, eventually, I did figure it out, right? I did start earning more because at least at this point, I'm a college graduate, and I did start, paying down my debt. And I started learning. I started teaching myself. I started trying to educate myself on what did I do wrong for someone who thought they knew what they were doing. How did I make such big mistakes? And I did learn. I did, I picked up some new books, I picked up some new skills, I picked up some new habits, and things got better. Slowly but surely, things got better. And once I was more on solid footing, I thought, well, how do I avoid, not so how much, how do I avoid, how do I help other people avoid these mistakes that I made? So for someone who had all of the advantages that I did, I should have been in a better position. So now thinking about someone who doesn't have a parent who's willing to talk about money or has the skills to talk about money, what can I do? So this is where the passion became strong within me to start giving back, to start helping other parents teach their kids about money. Because as much as I had parents who were willing to talk to me about money, the conversation, and you can hear it from the beginning of our conversation, the conversation always went around earning, saving, and that's kind of where it stopped. We didn't talk about debt. We didn't talk about investing. We didn't talk about wealth and growing our wealth. We didn't talk about insurance and protecting our wealth. The conversation stopped at earning and saving. So I wanted to start helping other parents give the full picture to their kids. So that's where it all started, where it was me saying, how do I help ensure other young people don't have to go through the same trials and tribulations I did? And to do that, I felt like it was really up to me to start empowering parents to have these conversations, to start, giving the full picture to their kids.
Oh my gosh, such a story, right? A story that I can relate to because I too grew up and we actually didn't talk much about money. It was more around the struggle of money, that it was never enough.
Mhm.
And I made a lot of those same mistakes. And so if you can catch kids when they're young, oh my gosh, you just give them such a head start when it comes to, living life. So why is it important? I know you're alluding to this, but I really want to get to the bottom of why it's so important to start teaching kids about money early and what are the long-term benefits of that?
Oh goodness. So this is an easy one. So we'll put it in these terms. Imagine for anyone who's gone off to college and not even with the credit cards, but just getting a student loan, for example. Imagine never having a bill, never paying a cell phone bill, energy bill, any type of bill. And now you've got access to 70, 100, $200,000 worth of loans. You've got all this money and you've never paid a bill in your life. We do our kids a disservice by not having these conversations, by not trying to teach them these skills and then expecting them to get it when they need it once they move out of their homes. It's on us as parents, as people who are trying to raise the next generation, to ensure that the skills to live in the world that we live in are with our kids once they leave us. And the only way to do that is to start when they're at home with us, when we've got access to them and they've got access to our wealth of experience and our wealth of knowledge. And we can do and say and teach them all of the things that we've learned through our years of, either growing and working and investing and making some money mistakes ourselves. We have all these things that we've learned, but it's only if we make it intentional to share that knowledge with our kids will they be better prepared when they're now on their own. So the reason is very clear in my mind, is that we need to make sure our kids are ready to be adults once they leave our home. We can't expect them to have those skills if we haven't started teaching them before they leave our home. And then as far as the long-term benefits, well, we know the negative effects of not having a good financial literacy education. I mentioned some of those. It's the depression, it's the anxiety, but there's also the financial pieces. It's lower credit scores, it's lower investments, it's lower savings rates, it's poor just wages, because you don't know the ability to negotiate your wage. So there's all these other downstream effects, and then those compound over time. So the sooner you could figure it out, the sooner you have those skills under your belt, the sooner you could start maximizing. So we know that, if you want to start gaining wealth and growing your wealth, the more time you have to do that, the more advantages you get. You can, ride the waves of the markets going up and down. You have more time for your wealth to compound and grow. So there's all of these advantages. That was just talking about investing, but if you can start off and you don't have the debt that you have to pay off, and you're just working with your income, saving that, investing that, you're also moving ahead. You're also putting your best foot forward. So there's all these benefits of not, you don't want to have your children start behind. And by not having the knowledge of how to manage their money, that's what we're doing. We're putting them at a disadvantage.
I've got something for you. If you make good money, but overspending is keeping you stuck in the cycle of credit card debt with little to no savings, you're invited to book a financial clarity consultation with me, yours truly. This is for you if you're ready for real support, not just more free advice that can be found on Google or quick fixes that never really solve the problem. Let's be honest, you know what you should be doing, but you're not doing it. Not because you're undisciplined or bad with money, but because of patterns you were never taught to undo. But that's where I come in. A financial clarity consultation is a private session where we'll look at where you are, where you want to go, and what's standing in the way. And if we both agree that working together is the best next step, I'll tell you how we can move forward inside of my coaching program, the Wealthy Woman's Academy, which is private, one-on-one coaching, just me, you, and your money. And if you're worried that getting your finances in order will mean giving up everything you love, don't. My philosophy is rooted in what I call the do both method. I believe you can build wealth and enjoy your life at the same time. That means yes, you can still vacation and say yes to things that matter. You'll leave this session with more clarity than you've had in a long time, plus real insight on what to do next to solve your money issues for good. If that sounds like what you've been needing, you're invited to go to jermainefoley.com/consult to book your session. That's Jermaine with a G, Foley.com/consult, or simply visit the show notes. Now let's jump back into the episode. Yeah, it's almost like instead of them just starting at level 0 or ground zero, they're starting like at -30. That's how kind of I was, right? I had to dig myself out of a hole just to get on a even playing field with some of my colleagues and just want something different for our kids. And I love that we're talking about it. So here's the thing. A lot of the women that are listening to this podcast, they are women who do well financially. They make good money in their careers and in their businesses, but they're not building wealth themselves. And so what would you say to a mother who wants to start talking to her kids about money, but she's like, listen, I don't even know where to start because I don't have my own act together. What would you say to her?
So this is, and I love that you bring this up because this is something that comes up all the time. And many of the conversations I have, it's usually with moms because I'm focused with kids and education. And it's usually the moms who end up holding up the mantle of helping kids with education, whether that be financial literacy or literacy in general. So I do hear this issue come up over and over again where it's usually, like if I'm not comfortable with my money, how am I going to talk to my kids about money? And for first couple of years, what I would say to them is, and I still say this, you know more than they do, right? So they're coming from zero, you are not. Even if you don't feel like you've got all your ducks in a row, you still know more than they do. And by postponing that conversation, you're not helping them. But what I've noticed is that's not enough. And I recognize that saying that is a start, but it can't be the end. So what I've been saying is, okay, well, we need to start helping more parents feel more comfortable with their money. And, resources like yourself, your coaching programs, that's a good way to start feeling more comfortable with your money. What I've done is that and you're very familiar with it because you'll be one of my speakers. I've created a virtual summit called Raising Generational Wealth. This year, it's about being savvy with your money, and it's focused on helping the parents. So most of my content is helping parents talk to kids about money and teach kids about money. This virtual summit is specifically about helping parents feel more comfortable with their money. So whether that be about helping them with budgeting or saving or investing or wherever they may be on their financial journey, I wanted to start helping parents. And when I say parents, again, I'm speaking mostly about moms here, because if I can help them feel more comfortable with their money, at least this is what they've told me, if they feel more comfortable with their money, then they'll be more comfortable talking to their kids about money. So I'm hoping that the Raising Generational Wealth Summit will help to, instill some of that confidence, to help, move them forward on their financial journey wherever they may be right now, so that they do start to feel, okay, I'm starting to understand this. I see how I can start building wealth. And now let me start talking to my kids about how we as a family, as a unit, can start generating wealth.
Yeah, I love that holistic approach, right? Because it's like you got to teach the teacher, you got to train the trainer. And so then they'll be more confident. And when they feel more confident, then they'll take the actions of actually teaching their kids about money. And I'm so glad you brought up the summit, and I'm excited to be a speaker. Tell us a little bit more about the summit. And I know I'm going to have a link so that people can sign up in the show notes. Mm-hmm. Is there a cost? When are the dates? Give me all the good stuff.
Oh, I'll give you all the logistics. Okay. So Raising Generational Wealth Virtual Summit, the Money Savvy Mom Summit. It will be on April 30th, May 1st, May 2nd. It is 100% free, and I made it free intentionally. I don't want there to be any barriers for anyone to attend. And the other thing is it's 100% virtual. There are a couple live sessions during the event, but most of the sessions are virtual. So no matter where you are in the world, you can attend and you can learn. And I've got great speakers like yourself. I've got financial coaches, financial therapists, financial planners. I've got so many experts all coming, sharing their knowledge, sharing their skills, their strategies, their tips, all with an attempt to help the audience learn, grow, and just become more financially confident. So April 30th is the start. I think I have over 30 speakers at this point. The content is so good. These speakers are so amazing. I'm so grateful. I'm grateful to you for being one of my speakers. Just to give a sense of the caliber of speaker I'm getting, I have you as one of my speakers. So that just gives people a sense of the type of content, and not just the content, but the place that these speakers are coming from, right? So these speakers aren't doing this because they're going to get a fee. They're not doing it because they want to earn. They're doing it because they know that there are people out there who are in need of what they know, and they want to share that information. So that's that's kind of that's the starting point. We're all very dedicated to helping people learn and grow. So yeah, so it's 3 days. The sessions are usually, they're tight. They're very much like workshops. So if there's something that you want to learn, the speakers will walk through like getting you from point A to point B. And so the sessions are available for about 48 hours. So it's really meant for you to get in, quick hits, learn, and start applying what you've learned. So it's really meant to be an impactful summit. It's meant to be a helpful summit. And again, the concept, the motivation for me starting this was to start helping moms feel more comfortable with their finances so that they can start, like I said, teaching their kids and passing on some of that knowledge to the next generation.
Okay, cool. So give us the name one more time.
Sure. So it's the Raising Generational Wealth. I've called it's Raising Generational Wealth is the brand, and it's the Money Savvy Mom Summit. So it's about being a money savvy mom. So this is
Ooh.
yeah. So like I said, I'm very passionate about this. I know this is my second year running it, and after last year, I was like, this is something I'm going to be doing year over year because it was the feedback I got from the audience, from the speakers. It was all so positive. It felt like a big love fest. Like we were just learning and teaching, and there's a nice little Facebook group where you can actually interact with some of the speakers individually. So there's going to be a live Q&A. So if you have questions that you're like, I just wish I knew whatever, there's a Q&A so you can ask your questions, get questions answered. You can go in the Facebook group. There's another spot to get questions answered. So it's 3 days of just intense motivation, learning, and positivity.
Awesome. So they sign up and then they'll get an email every day with the sessions.
Exactly. I try to make it as simple as possible. So you sign up, you'll get an email from me with all the logistics. And then on the first day of the summit, you'll get an email and you'll have a way to get access to all of the different sessions. You can watch them all at once. You could binge. You could watch them over the next 48 hours. You could do it in whatever way makes sense for you. I know I'm a parent. I know moms are busy. I know parents are busy. So I try to make it as, accessible as possible. So in whatever way it makes sense for you, you can watch those videos. And again, there's going to be tons and tons and tons of free content. I'm doing a bingo. So if you actually participate and you do some of the actions, you can do the bingo. There's some free prizes. I gave out a ton of free prizes last year. I'm looking forward to doing it again. I was saying to some friends of mine, I felt like Oprah in the Facebook group. I was like, you get a prize and you get a prize and you get a prize. It was just a lot of fun, and I'm looking forward to doing it again. So yeah, specific to your question, on the morning of each day, you'll get an email from me, and it'll give you a list of all the sessions that are available for that day. And like I said, over the next 48 hours, you can watch them in whatever order you want, as many times as you want. You can take notes. You can do whatever you want. There's other resources that are available. There's a swag bag. It's just so like I said, I just try to make it as fun, as engaging, as accessible as possible. I've got sessions there about, if you have got a child with special needs. I've got sessions, like I said, about budgeting. I've got sessions if, you're trying to make sure you've got that work-life balance and you don't want to like feel overwhelmed. So there's so much content there, and it's all focused on moms feeling more, like I said, feeling more comfortable, getting rid of some of that financial stress. I've got someone there talking about student loans and how to start paying off your student loans. So like you name it, it's there. I'm trying, like I said, trying my best to help move folks forward.
Awesome. Awesome. So you have to sign up. It is going to be amazing. And of course, I can't wait to give my talk, and I hope you all tune in for that. Okay, so let's continue on with our conversation. What are some of the common mistakes you see that parents make when it comes to money and their kids? And how can we start to shift some of those patterns?
Okay, so the one that I'll hone in on is not being intentional with the way we speak about money to our kids. So I fell into this trap for a long time. So one of the things, again, I'm a parent. You've got a child, you're in the grocery store, they're asking for something, and you're just trying to get your groceries done so you can get home and do the other 100 things on your to-do list before you can get those kids to bed. And to speed this up, I would say something like, no, we can't have that. We don't have the money for that. And then I move on. And then I took pause and I thought about it, and I'm like, how would this be interpreted if I was the child? I am with this parent, this person who loves me, and they're saying they don't have money for this thing that I'm asking for, but I see them buying groceries, I see them buying gas, I see them buying this, I see them buying that. So it could easily be interpreted as not so much we don't have money for that, it's I don't have money for you, or your needs
Mhm.
don't deserve our money, or any other perversion of what I've said, but it's not what I mean. What I'm trying to say in that moment is we have not budgeted for that. That is not part of our budget right now. That is not a priority in our budget right now. Maybe you can come back and ask me for that around Christmas or your birthday. Like that's what I mean to say, but in my haste, in my rush to just kind of move through the conversation, I've said something that's very inaccurate, and doing so can then cause the child to have a poor view of where we are as a family. They might think, oh, we don't have money. There's all these ways that it could be interpreted incorrectly. So one of the things I try to encourage parents to do is be very intentional when we speak about money. So one, be willing to have conversations about money, because that's the other part of it. And, we touched on it a moment ago when we talked about if you're not feeling comfortable with money, you might also feel, a little hesitant to talk about money. I know we have a legacy of being afraid to talk about money or being hesitant to talk about money in general, but we need to engage with our kids in an intentional way. So one, we need to first say, yes, we will have this conversation. You might not be able to have it in the grocery store. I'll fully admit that in that moment, you might already be too late because the meltdown's coming. But if we fully acknowledge that our kids are curious and they want to know more about these things, then we could take advantage of that curiosity and talk to them with intentional language, and they will start to learn. But we first have to take on the desire to teach, right? So they're going to come at us with curiosity because that's what they do. That's where they are. But we then need to match that curiosity with a willingness to engage. And if we do that, then there's some potential for learning. But we have to, do that first. So with regards to like things that we need to avoid, it's like I said, saying things with haste, not being intentional, and not engaging fully with that curiosity.
Absolutely. And it makes so much sense because when they're that young, that's when their brains are developing and those neural pathways are setting in. I heard a stat like by the third grade, kids have already formed their money story almost. They already have heard so many things about money from mom and dad, things that that they've heard or things that they've witnessed, and this just made up a story about. And now this is how they think things work, right? And so such a good point to just be mindful of how you talk to your kids. Common phrases like money doesn't grow on trees, or we can't afford it, or any of the things that we can.
Any of the cliches. Money is the root of all evil.
Yes.
Yeah, all of
Yes.
it. More money, more problems. All of those things, we've said them time and time again, and they roll off our tongue like we don't think about them. But for a young person, for someone who's just learning, they hear something like more money, more problems. And now what should they do in response to that? Should they avoid money because it causes problems? Should they seek it? Seeking problems? That doesn't make sense. So I love how you identify that these things all feed into their money story. We started our conversation with one of my money stories, and I know your audience probably has heard you talk about money stories in the past. Like our money stories do define us. They define how we act and react to money and money scenarios. So we have to, like, we can't fully shape our children's money story, but we can speak with intentionality. We can be willing to engage and help them learn and figure out what they're trying to figure out.
Yep, we can control the controllables.
Exactly that.
Awesome. Okay, so how can parents teach their kids about spending and saving without creating fear or guilt or that scarcity mindset around money?
So one of the things I encourage folks to do, if they can, and I know, we've said this before in the past as well, I'm sure personal finance is personal first. So if your budget allows, I really do encourage parents to give their child an allowance. And this one can get controversial, and I'll wade in with my 2 cents. And again, every parent could do it their own way. I don't like tying allowances to chores. I see an allowance as a means to practice using money. So if you give your child an allowance, this is a chance for them to practice spending. It gives them a chance to practice saving. It gives them a chance to practice transacting. There's all the donating. There's all these moments that they will now have access to practice with. Some folks talk about, there's no free money in life and all that. And I get that and I respect that. And if you feel like you need to tie it to chores, go ahead. But again, my objective with the allowance is to give your child an opportunity to practice using money. And I've often said, if it was, let's say, the piano lesson, you wouldn't say you need to clean up your room before you practice piano. I see the same thing with an allowance. An allowance is a chance to practice. That said, I think if you can give your child access to money in some way, and I have alternatives to allowance, which I'll talk about in a moment if you allow me. If you can give your child access to money, then you can start working on how they can spend, how they can save, and how they can, use money without the scarcity mindset, with the growth mindset, because now they're having a chance to practice, right? You give them the chance to make some mistakes. I remember when my child was pretty young, one of the things I used to say, I think it was like a Lord of the Rings reference, keep it private, keep it safe. When you have money, you need to, keep it private, keep it safe. And he didn't. He ended up, I think he was just holding it or something. He held it like a bill or something like that. He eventually lost it. It was super sad. Cried, tears. But it was a learning moment. And it was a moment where he learned with a very small amount of money. Now imagine if that was hundreds of dollars. Now, again, you're not going to be carrying hundreds of dollars around flippantly. But again, it gave him a chance to learn how to manage, how to hold, how to secure money in a safe environment with a very low risk, low cost to his overall well-being. So with regards to saving and spending, I'll use a friend of mine, David Delisle. He is the author of The Golden Quest. He's a wonderful guy. His book talks about, focusing on the awesome stuff. So you want to spend, you want to, save, you want to do all these things. One way to do that and make sure that you're doing it in a way that's, intentional, again, I'm using that word, is to only focus on buying the awesome stuff. So if you're going out and you're looking at stuff, I could use an example from a couple of weeks ago. We were on vacation. We were looking at souvenirs. My son wanted something. I asked him, is that your awesome stuff? He's like, no, not really. And then that was it. That was the end of the conversation about buying something because it wasn't his awesome stuff. So that's one way of doing it. And then as far as saving, one of the things that, I talk about, most financial people talk about, is making sure you save before you spend. So, pay yourself first, that concept. It works for kids just as well as it works for adults. So making sure that the money that you get, whether it's an allowance or some other form of income, making sure that you take some of that and put it aside before you go out and spend, allows you to spend without the anxiety, because you know that you've just made sure you're covered. You made sure that you're growing your savings. You're making sure that you're growing your wealth. So as long as you're doing that, you don't have to feel anxious. So I believe it was David who talked about one of his kids who spends a little bit more freely than his other son. And he was a little bit anxious. And he's like, you don't need to be, because you're saving first. So you're good. So, but all of these lessons need to come from examples, and they need to come from the kids actually using money. So this is why I'm such a big advocate for allowances. Now, like I said, I know not all families can provide allowances. Every family's budget is very different. One way that you can provide your kid access to money without giving them allowance is if you're budgeting yourself, and I hope you are, and you know that you're going to be spending X amount of money for, let's say, back to school supplies or clothing or what have you, or you've got your lunch budget for the week or what have you, give that to your child. You're going to be spending it on them anyways. Give it to them and let them manage it and say, okay, we're going to do some back to school shopping at the beginning of the school year. Here's what we need, or here's what you need. And here's how much we have to spend. You're going to manage this. If you have some left over, that's yours to keep. I was going to spend it anyways, so it's yours. It doesn't need to come back to me. So that's another way to give your child access to money if an allowance doesn't work. Because again, this isn't found money. This isn't extra money. This isn't anything other than the money you were already planning on spending on them. But again, this works great for teens. And it works especially great for teens because you have to consider it's only a few short years before they're going to have to learn how to do this on their own. So if we can give them opportunities to do it with us there as a backstop, with us there as coaches and consultants to walk them through, oh, you spent too much on this. Well, you're out of luck, or I'll help you out, or what have you, whatever way you want to manage it. But by having them work it out now, you're setting them up so when they need to do it on their own, it's not the first time.
So good. So I have two teenagers. Love the "is that your awesome" stuff. I love that question because I have one kid, my oldest, he's the person that never wants to spend anything, and I have to make him buy new socks. And I have my youngest who, if we would have let him when he was younger, he would not have anything. As soon as he gets his birthday money or any kind of money, it'll just be gone.
It's gone.
But now that we've come up with a system for him, and I teach this to my clients and I use it myself, he always wants something like, "Mom, can I get this? Can I get this? Let's talk about it in 48 hours. Right? I make him pause. So that just reminded me of kind of the strategy I use for my son is like, let's talk about it in 2 days. If you still want it, we'll talk about it. And he's like, "I'm going to want it. I'm going to want it." I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. If you're going to want it, we'll talk about it then." Half the time he never comes back. He forgets all about it. And other times he does. And we buy it or we talk about alternatives or things like that. So I love just having something that you do with your kids, like when they want something. It can be a question or it can be a pause. It can be any of that. Awesome.
No, I love that. You're right in the thick of it. And the pause is usually all we need to kind of like break that circuit of, because we're surrounded, and our kids are even more so than us, surrounded by people trying to get us to spend our money. Like that's the world we live in, right? Whether it be ads on billboards, on our phones, in the things we listen to and the things we watch, we're bombarded by people saying, "Hey, this thing is what you need to spend your money on." And it's up to us to say, do we need to spend our money on that? Do we not? But for our kids who are maybe even a bit more impulsive than we are, and maybe they're not, maybe they're just as impulsive as we are, we need to find ways to kind of break that impulse just for a moment so that we can say, is this something that we really need? Because without that, we're in a rough shape. We're definitely in rough shape.
Yes. And I think it's so much better, and I don't want to use that word, but I'm just going to use it, than just saying yes or no immediately, right? Because if it's always yes, 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 I don't know how realistic that is in the real world. But then if it's always no, 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 that can build up that resentment and that
that pent-up desire.
Yes. That pent-up desire, as you said, that will manifest when they're adults.
Yes.
And you'll kind of be like I was, like, I'm buying whatever I want. I don't care what anybody says. And then,
and it all comes back to having these conversations with our kids, right? Like if that whole cycle, from the one child who doesn't want to spend to the one who can't stop spending, they need to know that they need to balance their natural inclinations. You don't want to spend, and you hear something like that, right? You hear about a child who does not want to spend, and you're like, "Oh, this child is set up for success." But that hoarding nature can be just as detrimental as the child who wants to spend on everything. We need balance. Without balance, we fall apart. So we need to have these conversations, because the thing is too, we know our kids. We know what they're like. I'm in the same situation. I have a child who's, he's very entrepreneurial. He wants to spend his money. That's his thing. Then I have another child. She doesn't care about any of that. She doesn't care about money, but when she gets it, she spends it. So it's on me to identify these behaviors and say, "Hey, there's nothing wrong with that, but here's a system we can put in place specifically for you so that you still have the balance that you need to be financially successful later on." So that's the key. And it's only through conversations with them so they can recognize, oh, this is why hoarding isn't safe. This is why hoarding, while it might seem like a good thing in the moment, it actually could hold me back from living and having the experience that I want to have, to living that fulsome
Hmm.
life. Because that's the downside of, the hoarding behavior, right? So you've got all the money in the bank, but you're Scrooge McDuck and you can't go on a vacation with your good friends because you don't want to touch that. You have all your money in the bank, but it's not growing because you're too afraid to invest it, and now it's being eaten up by inflation. So there's
Inflation, yeah.
exactly. So there's all these downsides to both sides of the coin, and it's really up to us to help our children find the balance so they can live their full lives.
Awesome. So we've talked about debt, we've talked about saving money, we've talked about allowances. The one thing we haven't really talked about yet, which is part of your brand, is wealth building and
Mm.
building that generational wealth. So how can parents begin to talk to their kids about investing and buying assets and really setting up to one day be wealth builders?
Well, it's just that you said it in your question. They need to talk about it, and ideally, they need to be doing it. So I think the best, and we all know this, the best way to teach is to model, and the best way to teach is to teach someone else. So, or the best way to learn is to teach someone else. So, the ideal state is that we need to be doing it. We need to be modeling it. And this is where being open and transparent with your kids can really pay off. So, if you've got an investment fund, if you started investing for your retirement, or you started saving for some, big ticket item or whatever it might be, bring your kids into that conversation. Show them, tell them, explain it to them. What are you doing? Why are you doing it that way? Why is investing important? What is inflation? Talk about how back in your day it used to cost this. It sounds like an old-timey thing to say, but then make sure that you point out that the way that you avoid losing that buying power is by investing, right? So you have that, man, back in my day, piece of candy, a car, a house used to cost X. Now it costs X plus 1,000. But the way that we make sure that when we're trying to retire, we have invested to, outpace inflation. This is what we've done. This is how we're doing it. So bringing them into those conversations, it doesn't work for little ones as much, but it works great once your kids are in, like, once they're 10 plus, they understand all this. I think that's the other thing we do. We do a disservice by not appreciating that our kids are capable of understanding all of these concepts at an early age, at a very early age. Like they've got all the math skills to understand compound interest. They've got all the math skills to understand what inflation will do to your wealth if you're not investing. Just bring them into the conversation, show them your investment fund. What I've done with my son, like I said, he's a bit entrepreneurial, so he started baking at a pretty early age, and he sells his baked goods. He sells it at the farmers market. He does orders, all the rest. Sometimes he makes quite a bit of money, and I'm like, that's great. You're not spending all that. That doesn't make any sense. So we started buying investments. They're in my name, but I'll transfer them to him once he's old enough. But he's now seeing how his investment from years ago has grown into a bigger amount now. So he's keen and eager to buy more funds because he realizes, he sees it. He sees the best way to experience it and to see the benefit of it is to live it. So he's eager to buy more investments because he knows, I sold something 3 years ago. I made X amount of money. Half of that money I spent on whatever, and it's gone. The other half of that money has now grown to outpace the total amount that I made. So he sees the value of investing because he's investing. So that's how I
Mhm.
think we can help our kids learn about the value of investing and how they can see the value of wealth building is by bringing them into the conversation. And here's the other piece that goes back to what we were saying before about, if you're not feeling comfortable with your money, here's something you can do. You can start saying, I will do these things so I can show my kids. Use your kids as your
Mhm.
motivator. I think there's no greater motivator that we have than our kids. We want them to have the best lives they can. And if we can leave them uh, with some of our wealth, that's a great way to do it. And if we can start because we want to show them, all better.
Love it because you can do both, right? You can build wealth and leave some to them, right? And you can show them how to build their own and use
Exactly.
both of those as your motivators. I love that because sometimes Well, all the time when I work with my clients, that's one of the things that we have to be really clear on is their why so that they can stay motivated and absolutely. And it's always for me, it's been my kids, but even for women who don't have kids, they have strong whys too. And part of it is, I want to leave money for them. I want them to go to college debt free, all the things.
Right.
But I love your take on it too. Like, okay, let me do this so that I can show them how to do it as well.
Well, I can't remember who I was speaking with, and I apologize to them, but they brought up the point that, their clients are usually folks who have done very well for themselves. They've invested, they've got this wealth. They leave it to their kids. Their kids have no idea. They squander it within a couple of years. It's gone because they never learned anything about it, right? The parents were so focused on the building the wealth, but they never got to the point of teaching their kids how to build wealth and how to maintain the wealth that they've built. So, we can do all of these things to leave a legacy of wealth behind for our kids. But if we're not bringing them into the process, then by the time they get it, they're not going to know what to do with it. And it could be as quick as a year before all of that hard work that you spent your lifetime building could be gone. And they're starting again from zero, or like we said before, minus 20. So it's on us again to bring them into these conversations, to show them what we're doing, to teach them what to do, ideally before they need it. So if we can bring them into the wealth building conversation, again, this is just going to help them.
Yes. And this is why everyone should sign up for the Money Savvy Moms Summit so that you can get all these tools and become that savvy mom and then teach your kids how to be savvy as well. Okay. So I have one more question for you.
Yes, please.
What's one doable action a parent listening today can take this week to start raising a financially savvy kid?
I would say, see if you can sneakily or not have a conversation about money. I don't care what the conversation is about. It could be about them earning, them spending, you earning, you spending, whatever it is. But have one conversation. If you haven't already, have one conversation this week that deals with money, any aspect of it. I don't care what the aspect is. But it's, sometimes the hardest part for us is to just get started, right? Like that race just won't start because we just keep staring at the starting line. But once you put your foot over the starting line, you're off to the races. I think just having that one conversation, that first conversation, just to know, especially if you're, a person who grew up in a family that didn't talk about money, if you're a person who's had money struggles in the past, especially if you're a person who's, just the thought of talking about money causes you anxiety or stress, you need to start. And then you could realize it's really not that bad. Because the other piece of it, the whole we don't talk about money and all the feelings we get about money, those were in someone else's family. That's not your family now, right? You get to define and decide how your family is going to operate. So if your family in the past didn't talk about money, that doesn't need to be what you pass on to the family you have right now, today, your kids.
Clifton, this was an amazing conversation. Thank you so much for coming on. Tell people how they can stay connected to you. I know we're going to get everybody who's listening to sign up for the summit if you're a mom, but other than that, is there another way that people can connect with you?
Oh, of course. So you can go to my website, cliftoncorbin.com. You can find me on Instagram at Your Kids Their Money. I have a fun little activity book for kids that you can download. It's also free. It's at kidsmoneyworkbook.com. And that's, again, it's a fun way for kids just to start, playing some games and learning about money, especially the young ones, the, grades, let's say 1 to grade 3. So it's a fun activity book for them. And yeah, go to the summit. The link will be, I know you'll share the link with folks, but it's, the website will be, Raising Generational Wealth. And I'm super excited to have you as a speaker.
I'm excited as well. So yes, guys, go to the show notes and sign up using the link in the show notes. All right. Thank you so much, Clifton.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
All right. Bye-bye. Wait, before you go, have you checked out my free class? It's all about the steps you need to take if you want to build wealth without going on a strict budget. To sign up, simply go to jermainefoley.com/wealth class. That's Jermaine with a G, foley.com/wealth class. See you in there.